Easwaran, you are very pessimistic. You always talk about our defeat at the election. What we
I
want
think
to
I'm being,
achieve
I
is
think,
the
I think, I think I'm being more realistic than pessimistic because I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, yes, you're saying that there are still these
okay.
undecided votes, but there are a couple of candidates who are leading this election. So, I mean, if you have
Well,
plans,
no,
how can you get that?
we are ready to accept the bitter truth.
This is a group that also played a huge role to bring Gotabaya Rajapaksa into power. And now it's almost like, you're trying to erase history or rectify, if I may say, rectify the mistakes.
I'm sorry, I beg to differ. You are speaking with the assumption that Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the cause of the economic crisis. That is not so.
Wouldn't it be better if you're in government and you push for the cause as opposed to, sitting out and just, raising a voice from outside?
Firstly, uh, the opportunity is still there. As you may have heard, recent opinion polls show 25 to 30% of the voters are still undecided. Secondly, it is common consensus that winning candidate would get only 35 to 40%. Nobody would be able to surpass the 50% hallmark or the barrier.
And welcome to another episode of On Fire here on Daily Mirror. I'm Easwaran Rutnam. The 2024 presidential election is around the corner. Campaigning is very much underway, and a number of candidates are claiming that they have the upper hand at this election. We've seen some of the main candidates releasing their election manifestos, and the economy is, of course, taking center stage. On the program today, I have with me MP Udaya Gammanpila, who is backing businessman Dilip Jayavira at this election. Welcome to the program, MP Udaya Gammanpila.
Hello, thank you for the
So
opportunity.
my pleasure. So in my introduction, I mentioned that you were backing Dilip Jayavira, a businessman, for at this presidential election. The biggest question I think a lot of people are having, and of course I'm having as well, is why? Why is someone as popular as Udaya Gammanpila and even people like Vimal Veeravansa are backing someone who is not among the top 3 or 4 candidates at this election?
Well, we have always gone by the ideology, policies, or we have never thought who would win. We always thought of who should win. Then there are several reasons for us to support Dilip Jayavira. Firstly and foremostly, as you know, throughout the history, we have seen two camps at any major election: nationalist camp and anti-nationalist camp. In 1950s, when Sir John Kotalawala gave the leadership to anti-nationalist camp, SWRD Bandaranaike gave the leadership to nationalist camp. Thereafter, Dudley Senanayake gave the leadership to anti-nationalist camp, and Mrs. Sirimavo Bandaranaike gave the leadership to nationalist camp. In the recent past, Ranil Wickremesinghe has been leading the anti-nationalist camp, and Mahinda Rajapaksa had been leading the nationalist camp. So, at this election, none of the major parties have fielded a candidate for the nationalist cause. Dilip Jayavira is the only nationalist candidate out of these all 38 candidates at the election. So therefore, as nationalist, as you know, We have been nationalists for decades by now. So we have been fighting for the cause. We have stood by our policies. So we didn't have to think about whom we should support because we had no choice at all. The only available choice is Dilit Jaivir. Secondly,
What are you going to achieve? I mean, if
now
you're not in power, what can you achieve? I mean, wouldn't it be better if you're in government and you push for the cause as opposed to, sitting out and just, raising a voice from outside?
firstly, uh, the opportunity is still there. As you may have heard, recent opinion polls show 25 to 30% of the voters are still undecided. Secondly, it is common consensus that winning candidate would get only 35 to 40%. Nobody would be able to surpass the 50% hallmark or the barrier. Therefore, we have a huge potential, and these opinion polls further indicate almost all undecided voters have voted for Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the last presidential election. So, on the other hand, there are nationalist voters, and Dilit, actually, that is the potential vote bank of Dilit Jaivir. So, that's there. Secondly, Dilit has come out with Dilit has come out with a strategic plan to come out of this economic crisis. Throughout our election history, you may know, nobody has come out with a strategic plan as the election manifesto. But those documents do not set out when they are going to do it and how they are going to do it. But in Dilit's strategic plan, taking 2 steps forward from the policy document, he has not only mentioned what, but how and when as well. Thirdly, he is we are in economic crisis. We need a man with economic vision to come out of this crisis. Dilit has proven himself as a successful entrepreneur. That's why he says the nation needs entrepreneurial mindset. So, as you may have heard, Dilit in early 90s commenced an advertising firm called Triads, and within 10 years, it became #1 of Sri Lanka. Likewise, he 20 years ago.
See, I mean, I know Dilit's background, but then at the same time, this is a group that also played a huge role to bring Gotabaya Rajapaksa into power. And now it's almost like, you're trying to erase history or rectify, if I may say, rectify the mistakes by, coming out with this new group and then trying to get the support of all those people who voted for Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Would that be correct if I said that?
I'm sorry, I beg to differ. You are speaking with the assumption that Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the cause of the economic crisis. That is not so. We should know the reality. We faced the economic. Actually, I was a minister at that time, so I was fully aware of the facts. We had to pay around $5 to $7 billion as a loan repayment from year 2000 to 2022. So these were the loans, not a single dollar borrowed by Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Most of these loans were obtained by Ranil Wickremesinghe, the so-called savior of the nation from this economic crisis. In fact, he is the architect of the economic crisis because between 2018 and 2019 alone, he has borrowed $12 billion from the open market by issuing bonds. Therefore, Sri Lankan government had to pay back these loans. Government tried its best not to be bankrupt by honoring the repayment of loans. As a result, Sri Lanka did not have adequate dollars to repay, to import essential commodities such as petroleum products, coal, medicine, and industrial materials. Therefore, this crisis is caused by unserviceable debt obtained mainly by Ranil Wickremesinghe, thereafter Mahinda Rajapaksa and Chandrika Kumarnathi. Therefore, Gotabaya committed a blunder. When we realized this problem as early as October 2020, we wanted him to go to IMF and reschedule our loan. We wanted him to restrict unnecessary essential, so non-essential imports to save money for the essential import. He did not do these steps because Basil Rajapaksa was also part of the conspiracy to get rid of him. So Basil, who was handling the economic affairs of the government, finances of the government, did not listen to us. Then we decided to tell this bitter truth to the general public. You may recall, on 10th of June 2021, I held a media briefing and explained I have to increase the fuel prices in order to save limited foreign currency. You may recall, Sagara Karivasam, General Secretary of the SLPP, is the one who denounced the price increase, not by the opposition. Then I had to face a no confidence motion because of this 7 rupee price increase of diesel. Then in the end, Ranil Wickremesinghe was able to temporarily patch up this crisis by increasing prices of the fuel by 4-fold. When diesel was around 121 rupees by the time I left, they had to increase up to 480 rupees. So likewise, electricity prices were also increased like that. Therefore, if Basil implemented those two measures, firstly, loan rescheduling, secondly, curtailing the demand for imported goods by increasing prices, we would have avoided the crisis. So I must reiterate that the crisis, Gotabaya Rajapaksa happened to be the president of Sri Lanka by the time this crisis erupted. But it doesn't mean that he is the architect of the crisis.
But isn't it strange that, like, if Basil, like you're saying, if Basil was one of the main people behind this conspiracy to remove Gotabaya Rajapaksa, he's also now there together with Gotabaya Rajapaksa supporting Namal Rajapaksa to be president. It's like almost like, there was never an issue there. It's almost like Gotabaya Rajapaksa either knew or didn't know, or he was, he really doesn't care that Basil was trying to get rid of him.
And that's why it says blood is thicker than water. That's the only explanation for this hilarious relationships prevailed in Sri Lankan politics.
You were saying anyway now that, neither party is likely to get, the amount of votes that is required to form a government. If that be the case, and if you're saying that, okay, somebody like, your alliance or your party might try to give the backing for one of the main candidates to form government. Is that what your plan is?
No, not. What we want to be to become one of the main candidates. Since there is a huge vote bank which is still undecided, the potential is still there. And since they have voted Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the last presidential election, their thinking is more nationalist. Therefore, we have to work around the clock to reach these voters and convince them to vote for Dilip Jayawira. And very interesting fact is there. Firstly, as I explained, there will be no candidate would achieve 50% mark. But it's not an issue. According to Sri Lankan constitution, there is no need to have 50% of vote to become the president. It says if there is no candidate has reached the 50% mark, second and third preferences of the voters should be counted and added to the first two candidates, and still, if no candidate has passed the 50% mark, then whoever who has received the highest number of votes will be declared as the president. Therefore, not like in France, not like in Iran, there will be no second round for the presidential election. There is no need to reach 50%. So even if you may have received only 35%, but still, if you are the highest vote receiver, without any hesitation, Election Commission will declare you as the president.
What is your take on young Namal Rajapaksa contesting this election? I mean, he is now saying that he is going to follow the policies that his father, Mahinda Rajapaksa, had and rectify the mistakes, that Gotabaya Rajapaksa made. Don't you see someone young as him having the potential to, bring these nationalistic policies that you are looking for as well?
Firstly, Namal's campaign fundamentals are illogical. Now they say they want to fight against anti-nationalist actions of Ranil Wickremesinghe. As all of us know, Ranil Wickremesinghe was a solitary member in parliament from the UNP. So he had no power whatsoever. Ranil became the president thanks to Namal and the lot. They elected him to presidency at the presidential election held in Parliament on 20th July 2022. So if Ranil does something wrong, Namal and the SLPP should take the responsibility for it, because they are the ones who elected him to the power. Somebody may say Gotabaya was new to politics. We never expected Gota to act like that. It's a reasonable explanation. But Ranil, we have been knowing Ranil since 1977. We know what Ranil would do and what Ranil would not do, since he had been Prime Minister 5 times before 2022. Therefore, they have no excuse to say.
Was there an option? Was there an option at that point?
Well, no, what they argue, there were so many options. There were so many options from our camp. See, imagine a moment. Don't forget the fact that 6.9 million people voted for Gotabaya to defeat Ranil Wickremesinghe's government. Doing so good, why did they defeat him? Making such an effort, having a campaign of 5 years. So there is no logic in it. Secondly, until declaration of the presidential election, Easwaran, the SLPP had supported every single act, bill, regulation or budget brought by Ranil Wickremesinghe. So if they were against Ranil Wickremesinghe's policies, why didn't they oppose as you said, they had a misconception, so they believed Ranil Wickremesinghe and brought him to power. Then if they're against privatization, if they're against full implementation of 13th Amendment, if you are against the foreignization, making the country subject to foreign influence, then why did not they oppose those actions when Ranil was trying to do those? So their election campaign fundamentals are irrational. That's their first problem. Secondly, their target vote bank is Mahinda Rajapaksa loyalists. But most of the Mahinda Rajapaksa loyalists are of the view that Mahinda Rajapaksa was a nice person. People love him so much, but he faced this fate. In the end, Mahinda Rajapaksa had to tender his resignation because of the public pressure as a result of Maina Gogam and all these activities. Mahinda had to face this fate because of the family, because of the children. That is the general consensus. Therefore, even the people who love Mahinda would hate Namal. True, Namal is son of Mahinda, but still they think Mahinda's present predicament is a result of actions of his family.
And how would you at least your party look at dealing with the whole economic crisis vis-a-vis the IMF, because that is also a key factor here. Some are saying that they are going to renegotiate the deal with the IMF. Assuming you are in government, how would you deal with the IMF with the agreement that they have struck with Sri Lanka?
Well, I must say three important facts about the IMF agreement. Firstly, dealing with IMF is not something bad. If you look back the history, India in 1991, Russia in 1998 signed agreements with IMF to come out of their liquid issues and also to come out with the economic crisis. And those agreements help them to come out of those crises and become one of the major economies in the world, and in fact to become major powers in the world. But those characteristics cannot be seen in the agreement signed by Sri Lanka with the IMF. Now, what is our crisis? Our crisis is we have been exporting. Our export proceeds are very much less than our import expenditure. The gap is approximately $10 billion. For Sri Lanka, it's a huge amount. Then, in order to come out of this crisis, we should increase our exports, decrease our imports, and get rid of this trade gap. Now, during the past 2.5 years, have you seen any step taken by the government to achieve that objective? Nothing and nothing at all. In addition to that, IMF agreement has become a barrier in achieving this goal. Why? Now in India, there is a law which says exporters should bring their proceeds to the country within 3 months of the export. Otherwise, there is a fine. In Sri Lanka, we don't have such provision in our laws. On the other hand, IMF agreement says Sri Lanka should liberalize and ensure free flow of foreign currency inward and outward without any restriction. Because of this clause, I think clause 17, because of this clause, Sri Lankan government can't enact a law similar to what India has done. As long as this loophole is in our law, we can't expect to bridge the gap between export income and import expenditure. As you know, Sri Lankan businessmen, after exporting, they park their money in Dubai or Singapore, sometimes in Switzerland. Thereafter, they invest in Bangladesh, Vietnam, and in African countries. Therefore, just because we have increased our exports, as long as those proceeds do not come back to Sri Lanka, we can't come out of this foreign currency crisis. So this agreement has become a barrier in solving our biggest crisis. Most of the provisions in the, actually, although we call this an economic crisis, Easwaran, there are twin crises. There are interwoven, interdependent twin crises. Firstly, dollar crisis. The nation doesn't have adequate foreign currency to meet their requirement. Secondly, the government is having a rupee crisis. Government doesn't have adequate income to look after its expenditure. The IMF agreement has attempted to solve rupee crisis, increasing government revenue by way of increasing taxes, privatization of loss-making government ventures, then reducing the government number of government servants, getting rid of subsidies, cost-reflective pricing for utilities such as fuel, electricity, and gas. So those are the measures suggested by the IMF to solve our second crisis, that's rupee crisis of the government. But show me what are the provisions in this agreement to solve the biggest crisis, foreign currency crisis. No, Sri Lanka had to declare bankruptcy not because of rupee crisis. If the government doesn't have adequate rupees, government has always printed more money. That's what US also do. Not only Sri Lanka, every government does that. But Sri Lankan government can't print foreign currencies. Therefore, this is the largest crisis. We declared bankruptcy because of the lack of foreign currency to make repayment of loans. Unfortunately, focus of the IMF agreement is not the foreign currency crisis, but the rupee crisis. Therefore, this agreement is not adequate enough to cover. Not only it's not adequate enough to come out of the crisis, it is a barrier in solving the present crisis. That's why we have decided to suggest an alternative to IMF agreement. We have suggested, in order to increase the government's income, we have introduced two measures. Firstly, unique ID for everybody at birth. Now, soon after birth, parents are worried about giving a name. Likewise, government should be worried about giving a unique ID. Since then, everything what he does with the government or anywhere else, he will be referred with that ID. And second measure will be getting rid of cash. Now we have a black economy, Easwaran, as big as our official economy. In other words, we have reported only 50% of the actual national income. If we get rid of cash, so there will be no currency notes, no coins. Instead, using smartphone, if I have to make a payment, I will transfer from my account to your account. Then nobody can suppress the actual income because every single receipt is recorded in my bank account. Then, if our billionaires pay actual taxes as they are supposed to pay, government will be rich. Our calculation is that VAT can be reduced. VAT can be reduced to 3% with this suggestion. Then there will be no corruption. Now, in Sri Lanka, time to time, getting rid of corruption, catching the former thieves is a very popular election slogan. 1997, 1994, 2015, and once again in 2024, one of the main slogans is catching thieves, catching corrupt people. Have they done it in the past? Now, Chandrika Kumaratunga's main theme was catching thieves. But in the end, when she left the office, she was known as the bandit queen, Chaura Regina. Therefore, everybody expressed their intention to catch thieves, get rid of corruption, but they don't have a plan. But here, with these twin measures, unique ID and no cash transaction, if somebody is seeking for a bribe, if a government officer is soliciting for a bribe, he has to give his account number or one of his friends or family members' bank account number to collect that bribe. When there is an income, cash visit to that bank account, which is unusual, which is not a declared source, then bribery officers can probe into that. In that manner, Sri Lanka can get rid of corruption, and Sri Lankan government income will go up, and this crisis, we can come out of this crisis. One of the main aspects of coming out of this crisis. Now, India, you may have heard, there was a poverty alleviation program called Aadhaar. Government provides some kind of a monetary support to poor people is known as Adara, and government realized there are a lot of corruption in it. Lot of people who are not qualified to actually receive this payment are taking this, suppressing their actual income. But after introducing unified payment interface called UPI, they were able to reduce the number of recipients by 50%. Right now, UPI is the best payment platform in the entire world. As you know, India's literacy rate is 76%. And but against that, Sri Lanka has 94% literacy rate. And our mobile phone coverage, Sri Lanka has more mobile phones than the population. Therefore, if India has successfully implemented the UPI with smartphones, having a literacy rate at 76%, we can easily do this. No government was interested in doing this because corruption is the rule of their survival means. So if there is no corruption, there is no survival for the politicians. The nexus between corrupt dealers and politicians are essential for the maintenance of a black economy. So nobody was willing to do this. That's why every single party at this election repeatedly say, we will get rid of corruption. They repeatedly say, we will catch the thieves or catch the corrupt people of the past government. But they don't say how. Since we have come out with a strategic plan instead of an election manifesto, we have explained in detail how we are going to do it. Therefore, that's one aspect. That's how we are going to increase the government income and solve the rupee crisis, and that's how we are going to get rid of corruption. When you come to solving the foreign currency crisis, we have said our strategy is to give an entrepreneurial mindset to the entire nation. Doing business mindset or entrepreneurial mindset is not something entrepreneurs should have. Whatever you do, you may be a housewife, you may be a teacher, lawyer, doctor, you should be innovative. You should the ability to manage risk, identify risk and manage risk. You should know how to maximize the utilization of resources. Those skills will be imparted to people through education, through media, and through artistic things like songs, movies, teledramas, street dramas. So we will have a culture of entrepreneurship. With that, we are going to increase our productivity in every aspect, not in business, every aspect of the life. So we have come out with a strategy. Rather than just saying we will make a country rich, we will say how we make the country rich.
We've got only a few minutes left. So I just want to ask one final question. Let's say, your candidate does not win this election. What happens to you? I mean, next, of course, is, the parliamentary election. How are you going to face the election? What is your future plans? And how are you going to ensure that, all these plans that you have, somehow get implemented by whoever comes to power later on?
First of all, Easwaran, you are very pessimistic. You always talk about our defeat at the election. What we want to achieve is...
I think I'm being more realistic than pessimistic, because, look, the fact of the matter is, yes, you're saying that there are still these undecided votes, but there are a couple of candidates who are leading this election. So, if you have plans...
We are ready to accept the bitter truth. And I mentioned earlier that nobody will be able to achieve 50%. Even achieving 40% is really challenging at this moment. This is not my mere belief. It has been something, it's a fact confirmed by opinion polls done by different groups. Therefore, after the presidential election, there will be a parliamentary election, and all candidates, except present president, all candidates have indicated that they will dissolve parliament soon after the election. At that election, nobody will have the parliamentary majority. And as you know, Sri Lanka is having a semi-presidential system like in France. Therefore, the true ruler of the nation is not the president, but the person who has the control. In most of the cases in the past, the president was the one who had the control over the parliament. Therefore, we see him as the person who is powerful. But you may recall, there are 5 instances where a person other than the president had the control over parliament. Let me recall that quickly. In 1994, when Chandrika Bandaranayake became the prime minister, President Wijetunga did not have the control over the parliament. Country was governed not by President Wijetunga but Mr. Chandrika. In 2001, Chandrika was the president and Ranil Wickremesinghe, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, was having the majority in parliament. Country was run by, not by the president, but by the Prime Minister Ranil. Again, 2001, for a brief period, government was short of 9 members to achieve the simple majority in parliament. Then JVP came to support Chandrika with their wording was Parivasa government. Then they just had 10 members in parliament, but they run the country. Chandrika did whatever they commanded. Then 2015, President Sirisena was the head of state and the head of government nominally, but Ranil was having the parliamentary majority and he was running the country. Sirisena used to say, even I got to know these things from newspapers, you may recall. The latest example is Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the elected president with a vast majority, but country was run by Basil because his SLPP was having the majority in parliament. And Gotabaya was not a member of any of political parties at that time. So these 5 instances indicate us whoever who command the majority in parliament will run the country, not the president who is going to be elected by people on 21st of September. Then more crucial election in this situation. It's a different context, unique context. In this context, more important election is parliamentary election. If even a party which has 10 seats can run the country as proved by the JVP in year 2001. Therefore, in this scattered public opinion, nobody will command the majority, and there are major parties will not be able to seek each other's support because of their rivalries. So, if there's a fourth force, they may have a small number of parliamentary seats, but they may, just like what JVP did in 2001, they may be able to bridge the gap to achieve the simple majority in parliament. And India, in reality, that small party would run the government and run the country, and we will be able to witness the tail wagging the dog kind of situation.
Fortunately, we run out of time. It was really good getting your views and opinions and discussing the upcoming election, and also getting to know what will likely happen at the parliamentary elections. Thank you once again, Mr. Udaya Gammanpila, MP, for joining us on the program today.
Thanks, Easwaran. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.